What comes to mind when you hear the word nun? Well, most of you might say that nuns are most of the time cloistered away from the secular world and have exemplified a life of sacrifice and purity, bound by vows of chastity and obedience. However, underneath this peaceful veneer is a complicated story that is marked by more than just devotion, self-denial, and countless struggles that need to be overcome. Historically, some nuns have found themselves negotiating a maze of difficulties, their everyday lives clashing with the Church's requirements of sanctity and chastity today. We will go over a few of the unknown challenges that nuns have to endure for the rest of their lives. The origin. Most people use the term nuns to refer to both nuns and sisters, but there are several key distinctions. Nuns spend their days praying and working at their convent or monastery. Sisters are increasingly engaged in the world, doing a variety of jobs, the majority of which benefit those in need. Sisters refer to their works as ministries, but both nuns and sisters are known as women religious. In addition to this, what they have in common is that all women religious make vows to God, live in community, devote their entire lives to God, and live in the spirit of the persons who created their specific religious order. Monasteries were a constant component of the medieval landscape, with potentially more than half dedicated completely to women. Nunnery norms and lifestyles were fairly similar to those of male monasteries. Nuns accepted vows of chastity, gave up worldly possessions, and dedicated their lives to prayer, religious study, and assisting society's most vulnerable. Many nuns wrote religious prose and music, the most famous of which was the 12th century CE abbess Hildegard of Bingen. Christian women who vowed to live a simple, austere life of chastity to honor God, acquire knowledge, and undertake charity work have been documented since the 4th century CE, if not earlier, as have Christian males who followed such a life in isolated portions of Egypt and Syria. Ascetics gradually began to live together in groups, albeit they originally continued to live their own individualized lives, only gathering for worship. As such communities evolved, their members began to live more communally, sharing housing, food, and the tasks necessary to maintain the complexes that became what we now call monasteries and nunneries. The monastic notion expanded to Europe in the 5th century CE when personalities such as the Italian abbot Saint Benedict of Nursia developed monastic regulations and founded the Benedictine order, which constructed monasteries throughout Europe. According to mythology, Benedict had a twin sister named Saint Scholastica, who founded women's monasteries. Such nunneries were frequently erected at a distance from monks' monasteries because abbots were afraid that their members would be distracted by any proximity to the opposite sex. Monasteries, such as Cluny Abbey in French Burgundy, forbid the construction of a nunnery within 4 miles of their premises. Nonetheless, such isolation was not always the case, and mixed-gender monasteries existed, particularly in Northern Europe, with Whitby Abbey in North Yorkshire, England, and Interlaken in Switzerland, serving as well-known examples. It is worth noting, however, that the medieval monastic life for men and women was very similar. Nunneries, like male monasteries, were able to maintain themselves through contributions of land, buildings, money, and goods from wealthy donors, revenue from estates and assets in the form of rents and agricultural products, and royal tax exemptions. The secret relationship. Here's where the secret life of a nun comes into play, and you'll be surprised what happens behind closed doors. It is not uncommon for nuns to violate their vows of celibacy because at the end of the day, they are humans who cannot stand temptations. These mistakes have occasionally resulted in romances taking place behind the convent's walls in secrecy. Although they are uncommon, relationships with priests, other nuns, or parishioners have happened, which has complicated the already difficult existence of a convent. Apart from the psychological and physical difficulties associated with abstinence, the social dimension of a nun's existence can also play a noteworthy role. One may feel alone and isolated at a convent due to its remote location and strict regulations and expectations. This setting can be useful for spiritual reflection, but it can also make it more difficult to live a chaste life. As mentioned, there are plenty of relationships that happen behind the closed doors of the convent. And not all of them are heterosexual. Nuns, just like most people, are not immune to homosexuality. Though not many are documented, many nuns are coming out as lesbians and have been advocating for rights who identify themselves as homosexual. We can also say that not everyone who serves the church is indeed holy, as most of these homosexual relationships end up hidden under the rug and inside the closet. But who are we to judge? Understandably, people in the church will take extreme measures to keep homosexuality from the public eye, as this topic has been the subject of criticism and hate for a long time. In modern times, some nuns even leave the convent to marry each other. That is how restrictive the nun's lifestyle is. And with that, homosexuality is extremely forbidden, and the only way to continue such a relationship is to choose between your faith and the person you love. The strict rules. It's difficult to discuss interesting rules that nuns have to follow, since anything that is a normal part of your life doesn't appear intriguing to you, and nuns and sisters are organized into orders or congregations, each with its own set of laws. However, we will try and talk about what are the usual rules nuns should strictly follow. The first thing that springs to mind is the evangelical counsels of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Different orders or congregations interpret the vows differently, emphasizing different components. For example, the Order of St. Clare, known as the Poor Clares, emphasizes the vow of poverty. This does not imply just not having property and so on. It also means that your time belongs to the community, as do your skills and abilities. Another element is that we do not generally accept or give presents without the abbess's approval. It's fairly simple. If something does not belong to you, you do not have the right to dispose of it. In practice, it followed these lines. Let's imagine a parcel arrived at the monastery addressed to a nun. That nun would open it with the abbess, and if she truly desired something, she would get permission to keep it. The purpose is not the thing itself, but rather the decision to let go of pride, which is a form of possession, in addition to the simple act of asking, which aids in the development of humility. If the article was something that another nun needed more than they did, the abbess had every right to give it to her. Aside from this, nuns also need to follow a specific daily routine. According to History Learning site, a modern nun's daily routine is similar to that of ancient nuns. Wake up, pray, eat, clean, read, work, and converse. Nowadays, every nun is required to adhere to their orders and the daily program of the convent. Some are tighter, while others are more outgoing. According to their website, Benedictines in Herefordshire, England wake up around 5 a.m. to pray, eat, relax, and work in the garden. On the other hand, the Visitation Sisters of Philadelphia, according to their website, begins each day at 5:30 a.m. They also participate in comparable activities, such as arts and crafts projects and computer-based projects. On top of this, the Carmelites of Colorado Springs engage in a variety of online activities including sewing, household work, bookkeeping, and communal correspondence. The Liturgy of the Hours, as described in this Quora topic, is a sequence of prayers and services that occur throughout the day, such as lauds and compline. Dishes are also mentioned in this YouTube video by an Anglican nun. Plenty of dishes. Moving on, nuns' vow of chastity attracts a lot of attention, since it is naturally difficult for most people to comprehend and fathom. According to Sister Julie on the A Nun's Life blog, sexual relationships are strictly banned, regardless of desire. Although she recognizes that sex is a powerful experience of union and love, nuns choose to express their love in non-sexual ways, like as community service, prayer and devotional activities, and communing with the divine more universally. The expressions married to Jesus or brides of Christ are frequently used in this context. Finally, obedience. What is the object of your obedience? According to Ask a Catholic, this refers to living a life in imitation of Jesus. The struggle. While most people believe that serving God will lead to an easy and blessed life, it's not always the case. Nuns indeed feel the fulfillment of people is part of God's plan, but it doesn't mean they don't have to deal with challenges. It's the complete opposite, because being a nun also means facing the ups and downs in life from a different perspective. The vow of chastity, a cornerstone of the religious life for nuns in the Roman Catholic Church, has been a source of both veneration and contention throughout history. This vow, which requires nuns to refrain from marriage and sexual contact, is meant to encourage a life entirely dedicated to spiritual service. However, many nuns have found it difficult to live up to this promise in practice. Celibacy is a discipline that requires not only physical abstinence, but also mental and emotional restraint. It necessitates entire devotion to monastic life, frequently forcing nuns to ignore basic human needs and feelings. While many people have taken this route with a true sense of sacrifice and commitment, others have struggled daily to balance their religious responsibilities with their basic human needs. Historically, the Roman Catholic Church has seen celibacy as a necessary sacrifice paid by its clergy. For nuns, it represents their spiritual marriage to Christ, a pledge to prioritize their love for God before all else. This idea, however, contradicts the basic human desire for friendship and closeness. The mental turmoil caused by this paradox has been a hidden war for many nuns, rarely discussed but often strongly felt. Cases of nuns breaking their celibacy vows are not uncommon. In other cases, these breaches resulted in hidden relationships within the convent. Aside from this, there is also a problem when it comes to keeping the sisterhood from extinction. But these days, the nuns' time-honored commitments of service, virginity, poverty, and obedience appear far distant from the present orbit in which we live, sparking a passionate effort to preserve nuns across the country. For years, the number of women donning habits and committing their lives to the Lord has been falling, generating concerns that the several hundred orders of nuns are not only vulnerable, but also on the verge of disappearing. In 1965, there were around 180,000 Catholic sisters in the U.S. However, the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate reports that there are presently fewer than 42,000 nuns in the United States, representing a 76% reduction. Analysts predict that fewer than 1,000 nuns will remain in the nation by 2042 if current trends continue. And that alone is very scary news, because there will come a time when there will be no new nuns that will continue this practice. According to a poll conducted by the National Religious Vocation, 44% of newcomers were inspired to join by a friend, followed by priests, 41%, religious sisters or brothers, 40%, their mother, 31%, and their father, 28%. 70% of the women held a bachelor's degree before joining the religious community. In recent years, the concept of the millennial nun has gained traction on the internet, resulting in narratives about young women avoiding the intricate web of modern existence in favor of devoting their lives in devotion to God. According to researchers, the majority of nuns prefer the visible sister position over the reclusive convent life. While the modern sisterhood remains firmly traditional, it has become more attentive to contemporary elements such as social media and activism. The new sisters, who frequently use the hashtag #MediaNuns, let the outside world into their typically secluded existence. There is even a dating app for that. The NVRC's vocationmatch.com website claims to match an applicant to their most appropriate religious community once an interested individual completes an online evaluation. Nonetheless, attracting enough recruits remains a difficult task. However, the number of people taking their vows is outnumbered by those leaving their service. The average age of a Catholic nun in the United States is almost 80, and convents across the country are closing. The aging population of nuns poses challenges for the Institute's ability to care for them. Convents are straining to cover the expenditures associated with assisted living and nursing facilities. In May 2018, the Vatican announced rules requiring all contemplative groups, which are nominally formed for continuous meditation, to have at least 7 members, a threshold that many can no longer achieve. Being a nun is not a walk in the park. It requires more than just faith. Thus, in case you are considering walking such a path, make sure you ask yourself how far you can go to live a life of faith and discipline. How about you? Let us know in the comments below. Also, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories from history.